Wait, remember Duck Dodgers? It was an early 2000s cartoon that plays with characters from the Looney Tunes universe, originally spawning from a short animated film from the 1950s. Clearly, with a name like Duck Dodgers, it's easy to see which Looney Tunes character we mainly focus on here as a main character for the series, Daffy Duck. Well, kind of. We're going to get into all of that in today's video. Duck Dodgers is a show that I really enjoyed growing up. When it comes to anything sci-fi or space-related, you can find me front and center of the TV. Looney tuned in to see what this week in cartoony adventures had in store. A few months back from making this video, I was really excited to revisit Duck Dodgers thanks to the series being released on Blu-ray, which sparked me wanting to make this video on the subject. So if you're ready to jump into this semi-short-lived show featuring some familiar faces, let's do just that. While Duck Dodgers wasn't a show until 2003, the first ever glimpse into these galactic adventures comes from the 1953 short called Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. Fan favorite character of the Looney Tunes, Daffy Duck, leads the series wherein that weird and wacky world of the Looney Tunes plays the role of Duck Dodgers, a space-traveling hero who faces off against threats to the universe like Marvin the Martian before he was given that proper name, along with his trusty companion, the eager young space cadet played by the lovable Porky Pig. The 7-minute short was a take on the comic character Buck Rogers and his space-related adventures in the 25th century, but thanks to how well this short was received, it carved a legacy all its own. In fact, it was so well liked that George Lucas wanted to have this short played in front of showings for the original Star Wars film in theaters, according to Mark Hamill confirming this online a few years back, as the short, directed by animation veteran Chuck Jones, is listed as the 4th greatest cartoon of all time out of a list of 50 back in 1994. So it's no wonder that eventually, this concept would be fully fleshed out in the 21st century as its own cartoon series. Heck, you can even hear it playing in the background of a scene in Steven Spielberg's classic alien film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a personal favorite of mine in the genre that explores the extraterrestrial alongside the human element. The short itself saw Duck Dodgers finding Planet X in search of a low and resource element as our duck and pig duo deal with all the slapstick and situational comedy that come from just being themselves while navigating the stars. Upon eventually finding the correct planet, they begin their ongoing shenanigans with the antagonist Marvin the Martian, getting into a battle over claiming the territory in the name of Earth or in the name of Mars. These battles against each other end with the ultimate destruction of the planet itself, as the head-butting foes continue on when all that's left is a small part of the planet that Duck Dodgers is able to claim, with a barely holding on Marvin ultimately left undefeated, giving us the knowledge that their space battles will continue on beyond this initial confrontation. The short itself is genuinely great and shows off why it worked so well back in the 50s, along with the several sequel cartoon shorts coming out in the 80s and 90s from it, showcasing why it was ripe for an eventual TV series to flesh out this concept. Luckily, the early 2000s was the right time to explore this concept once more, leading us to the full-on show simply titled Duck Dodgers.
Objects may be closer than they appear.
On paper, you can look at the base concept for a character like Daffy Duck as a secondary comic relief character, but thanks to the long history of Looney Tunes, Daffy Duck is so much more than that, even when often fitting that mold when appearing alongside the main star of it all, Bugs Bunny. We have so many examples of comic relief side characters having their own spin-off that fundamentally doesn't understand what makes them a side supporting character, versus a more grounded lead. But Daffy is pretty special in that they never fully flanderized the character like other show spin-offs may often do. While coming off most times as a lovable idiot that brings on his own on-screen comedic torture, he was still someone you wanted to root for. He's hot-headed, ego-driven, and sometimes too big for his own britches, but none of those would get in the way of still wanting to see him succeed, regardless of also wanting to see him constantly getting served up a dish of disintegration. This incredibly well-done threaded needle graduated him to have a shot at his own starring vessel with Duck Dodgers, when the show fully came to be in 2003. This all comes at a time where the old guard of cartoons were being phased out, and where new ideas would be tested left and right, and more legacy cartoon properties were given the chance to find new avenues to explore to try and stay relevant with the changing market of viewers as the generations would go on. The 2000s were a weird time. My whole channel is a big testament to that. So more experimental ideas with these legacy cartoons were happening. And I'm not just talking about the Lunatics Unleashed levels of weirdness and experimentation. Plus, that show is also genuinely good. I did a whole video on that about a year ago. This wasn't even strictly a 2000s 2000s thing. Each generation, these shows, especially ones with a legacy as rich as Looney Tunes, would try and find something that fits that generation perfectly. The 90s had the semi-babyfication of the Looney Tunes with stuff like Tiny Toon Adventures, which is now back, by the way, with Tiny Toons Looniversity, but Duck Dodgers would be a fully separate thing all on its own. And also, yes, there was a Duck Dodgers Jr. segment in Tiny Toon Adventures, and I think that's great. Or an even better example, I guess, for the continuing of the babyfication would be the Baby Looney Tunes show. That started before and ran consecutively alongside Duck Dodgers. But at this point, characters like Marvin the Martian had become a lot more used and fleshed out in the Looney Tunes world, making the character a lot more recognizable and loved as a fun villain. So going back to the drawing board when making Duck Dodgers a reality, we have main characters that are all established for an easy attachment for both an older audience and a newer, younger audience. From there, we can easily build a fun back and forth rivalry between the characters that harkens back to both the feuds of Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, as well as the extra explosive nature of Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. I look back at the 2000s as this nice resurgence of sci-fi as well, where sure, there was still plenty of it beforehand, but I feel the mainstream adoption of it was taking place more and more so around then. So to pair all of this together wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. At least, why not give it a shot? The series would continue on the 24th century place and time, and wouldn't be afraid to reach into their grab bag arsenal of characters from the Looney Tunes universe for cameos as other characters or creatures within the world of what essentially is a show within a show. It parodies other popular sci-fi media along with cartoons of the past to give the show a place that sits in the realm of creating its own footprint in sci-fi while acknowledging the genre it now fits in with a level of respect and reference that only the Looney Tunes brand can do so well. Here, Daffy Duck is once again the titular character of Duck Dodgers, a character brought into the future 24th century after being frozen for so long. Now being thrust into the role of a space adventure hero, Duck Dodgers has to overcome all of the challenges he faces, with the toughest sometimes just being himself. A character that struggles with being this greater hero for the sake of the greater good, but through his ignorance and ego initially. He's not the smartest, he isn't giving it his all, but somehow luck seems to be on his side, no matter how much pain he usually endures within an episode of the show. Voiced by Joe Alasky, Duck Dodgers is a character that is both relatable to many and one that can be so different from your own set of morals that you can't help but champion his better qualities and yet root for his ego checks. Along with his trusty, eager young space cadet played by Porky Pig, voiced by Bob Bergen, these two share a fun and sometimes heartwarming partner dynamic throughout the show's run. The space cadet is the antithesis of Duck Dodgers in many ways. He's extremely smart and assists Dodgers in so many ways that make him look good and save the day, with him being loyal to a fault and following basically every direction or order given to him as he looks up to Dodgers as the hero Dodgers thinks himself as. So as a side character, the space cadet offers a nice inverse for the main character to bounce off of in more situational problems, and even so during any downtime the show offers. For an even more on-the-nose character, there is Dr. IQ High, voiced by Richard McGonigal, who is the scientist responsible for unfreezing Duck Dodgers, believing him to be this incredible hero from the 21st century that is needed to help in the future century. His character serves as the chief scientist for the Galactic Protectorate that commands Dodgers for the missions he is sent on, most times clashing with Dodgers over his attitude he has, and most times his inability to do things right. The main antagonist of the show is once again Marvin the Martian, or rather Martian Commander X2, played by Marvin the Martian, and also voiced by Joe Alasky. The commanding Martian officer is always annoyed by both his galactic rival, Duck Dodgers, causing them to always clash as they run into one another, but as well as his queen that he takes orders from for his missions as well. He is accompanied by his trusty space canine companion, K9, who is voiced by Frank Welker, who recently took over the voice role of Scooby-Doo in 2002, so that's pretty cool. In fact, Frank has voiced several dogs: Dynamite the Dog Wonder, Buttons from Animaniacs, Roger in Bobby's World, Sophie in the Chipmunk Adventure, frickin' Cujo in Cujo. The list goes on from there. While the Queen of Mars, voiced by Tia Carrera, is the overall main baddie of the show, Marvin is always first and foremost the main focus when looking at the direct conflict in the show, despite getting some other Rogues Gallery members that get in the way throughout. It's a show with a pretty simple premise. Duck Dodgers get sent on various missions throughout the galaxy, and some sort of fun, often slapstick and situational humor, as well as conflicts all ensue. It works so well for what it is because it is so simple. The Looney Tunes in general have operated under the banner of not overcomplicating the plots and adventures over giving us fun characters to see being played around with in their sandbox of sorts. What I personally love about the show is how it handles what the show is at its core. It always makes sure that fun is had. So while the base of it feels simple, you always get left with what feels like a fun little adventure and a bunch of laughs along the way. Aesthetically, the show made the conscious decision to to bring the classic look that the sci-fi genre had in the early to mid 1900s, that being retrofuturism. A gorgeous art style that blends a vision of the future once thought and fantasized over from that time, that blends together the past and imagined future perfectly to create something so vividly realized yet unfamiliar. This was brought to life thanks to the help of artist Joel Parrott, who has a background in, and with no pun intended, background art, with something like the film The Iron Giant showcasing his incredible work of designing a fleshed out setting through background visuals, continuing to be involved in the world of Warner Brothers through films more recently like Scoob and Space Jam: A New Legacy. So say what you want about those films, but a lot still goes into fully bringing them to life that often get overlooked. For me, the characters themselves are a big reason I enjoy watching, as Daffy Duck has always been a highlight standout character from the LTU, the Looney Tunes universe, that never fails to bring a smile to my face through their consistent tropes via his attitude, or all of the visual comedic torture he's been put through and will continue to be put through. Giving him the main focus here was a lot of fun. Having Porky Pig to play off of gave the show an extra level to the characters themselves that didn't only give it slapstick to rely on. Also giving Marvin the Martian a more fleshed out role that made the character that much more lovably evil, not just being a bad guy for the sake of being a bad guy, but one who has his own personal conflict that humanizes the Martian to be more understood and in some ways more relatable to the audience, I think was just a genuinely great idea. In fact, his connection to Duck Dodgers here being looked into to help explain why Dodgers was frozen in the first place and made to look like a hero in the 21st century was a nice reveal that builds out this world of the show in a genuine way that doesn't make it feel like they're trying to tack on more of a story for the sake of it, but to show a deeper mirrored look between characters on both sides of the coin. I genuinely love what the show had to offer, from the characters and the missions that they went on, to the art direction of the backgrounds, the outfits, and all of the planets visited in the show. But with all that being said, the show ended fairly early in comparison to other shows at the time. So let's take a look into what happened to Duck Dodgers. After 3 total seasons containing 39 episodes, Duck Dodgers as a series had come to an end in 2005. Partially, we can look at the constant changing of the guard of direction for what shows worked or what shows didn't work, with constant new trials of ideas, as both Duck Dodgers and the consecutively running Baby Looney Tunes would come to an end that year, with Lunatics Unleashed starting up from there, and lasting even less time. But for a whole other myriad of reasons that I've already separately went into. The production of the show simply came to an end in 2005 as the third season of the show wrapped, and while the finale to the show doesn't have a full finality to it, it does end off in a traditional way in a fake documentary about Duck Dodgers and some real and fake heroics. But as far as a concrete reason Duck Dodgers came to an end, there really isn't too much to look at aside from the show going from Cartoon Network to their sister channel Boomerang before the midpoint of the third season of the show. The overall rating from episode to episode was still retaining a decent response from those who did watch, not losing any quality the show started with, but potentially viewership numbers were harder to maintain in such a space as booming as the animation space in the 2000s. Constant shows, new ideas, other networks, it was a booming time and the space was getting harder to hold attention. So along with that and the changing of the networks, it was seemingly easy to see the writing on the wall that the show may be coming to an end. But one thing we do know is that it wasn't for lack of being a well-made show that many people did enjoy. The show even had a fair share of recognition for what it brought to the table, being nominated in multiple categories during the 2004 Annie Awards for Outstanding Achievement, Production Design, Music, and Voice Acting, fully winning for its composed music done by Robert J. Kral. Continuing from there with nominations in both 2004 and 2005 by the Emmys, with Joe Alaskey winning Outstanding Performer in an Animated Program in 2005. Duck Dodgers even had multiple ties into the video game world, as there was a Super Nintendo and Game Boy game titled Daffy Duck: The Marvin Missions that came out in 1993 and 1995 for the US, that didn't fully embrace the Duck Dodgers name yet, but it's clear what it was based on. There's even a Nintendo 64 game that released in the year 2000 that does embrace the actual name, called Duck Dodgers, starring Daffy Duck. They were so close to just embracing the Duck Dodgers name, but I'll let them slide. Aside from those titles, the Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 2, and Xbox 360 game Looney Tunes Acme Arsenal, which released in 2007, featured the Duck Dodgers character, along with another nod to Duck Dodgers being in the 2014 video game Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, that had the playable character of Green Loonturn. The Duck Dodgers play on the Green Lantern character, so that's really cool. It's extra special that this was the final time Joe Alasky reprised the role before he would sadly pass away in 2016. The legacy the show leaves is one that could be revisited again one day. For what it is, the show itself is 3 incredible seasons that showcases why the show earned its spot in both the realm of sci-fi and within the Looney Tunes universe. Adding on to that, the original short in 1953 stands the test of time as a piece of comedic gold with generational lasting animation that represents the era it came from so well. When it became a full show, it embraced the new era it was in without feeling like it was trying to reinvent what it needed to be. The opening theme song was done by a collaborative effort from Tom Jones and the band The Flaming Lips, blending together a sound that represents the different eras from back around the original short to the new full-on show. It's classy, funky, electrifying, and overall the perfect tone setter for the adventures to come following it playing. The show, while having many things that relate back to the other Looney Tunes characters, never felt like it had to rely on the face of the brand, never having Bugs Bunny make an appearance in the show, whether that be in a cameo role that relates to the character or something more random like just having him appear for the heck of it. While he may have been referenced a time or two, Bugs never became a crutch that the show felt that they needed to rely on to get people to tune in. Going back to how it respects and pays homage to both new and old within several fields, the show can reference something like Popeye one moment and then fully go into a Samurai Jack parody another moment. Or you can have something like The Fudd that references both the character of Elmer Fudd along with being a play on the enemies from the Halo series called The Flood. I've already mentioned that Duck Dodgers was represented in other media such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and even slightly bringing back the character through Tiny Toon Adventures with Duck Dodgers Jr. But the character has lived on through other pieces of media as well, with some being a bit more closely attached to the brand like in Looney Tunes Back in Action, the 2003 film with Brendan Fraser, where Daffy Duck taps into his Duck Dodgers alter ego, but even in things like Babylon 5, where in the mid-90s the sci-fi show references it as a character's second favorite thing in the universe, and even another moment where characters in that show are watching the original short. And something I love here is that at one point the Animaniacs appear in the show, in an interesting way, with the young space cadets' nephews and niece being introduced as Porco, Puerco, and Sal, who would be voiced by the 3 Animaniacs themselves, Jess Harnell, Rob Paulson, and Tress MacNeille. You can even look at the moment when Duck Dodgers performs It's Not Unusual through the voice of Tom Jones, as a fun nod to him, as well as what made the song re-famous again with Carlton in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Duck Dodgers just likes to have fun within the medium of animation, sci-fi, and the entertainment space as a whole, and combined with all of the other reasons I have listed in this video for why I enjoy the series, makes Duck Dodgers truly a joy of a cartoon. Also, Dave Mustaine from the band Megadeth was fully in an episode, and they even performed a song that was on their album The System Has Failed, released in 2004. Why? I don't know, but it's kind of cool, and it makes me look back on all the other random celebrity and musician cameos that happen in cartoons of the past for random tie-ins. I don't know if Duck Dodger viewers were the exact audience to sell the band Megadeth to, but hey, it happened, and that's the 2000s for you. But as far as Duck Dodgers goes, the show holds a special place in my heart for how much fun I had with it as a kid growing up in the early 2000s, and now as an adult revisiting those exact feelings. I think it holds up extremely well for some cartoony fun, and has a style wholly unique to itself from other Looney Tunes related properties, making it worth the watch alone if you're already a fan of the Looney Tunes in general, but gives you plenty of reasons to fully like it on its own merits. Outside of the cartoon, Duck Dodgers, with both Dodgers himself along with Marvin the Martian, were commemorated in 2003 as their own mission patches for the first space launch squadron for the Mars Exploration Rover mission launched in that year, and that's a pretty cool legacy. Make sure to let me know in the comments your thoughts and feelings on the show. I'd love to hear your memories of it if you watched it back when it originally was on the air. Thanks so much for watching. Follow for updates on my socials, like and subscribe for more content like this. Later.